Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we have a game from the Gibraltar Masters Tournament. On the white side we have Hikaru Nakamura. On the black side we have Grandmaster Iturrizaga. Let's see how the game went. Hikaru starts with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6. The Queen's Indian defense on the board. Which variation? Well, g3, bishop e7, bishop g2, bishop e7. This is the old main line. Both sides then castle, and we have rook e1. So what does white want to do? White wants to push e4, but rook e1 is a preparatory move. White might also think of playing knight c3, queen c2, and then be able to make this push. Now obviously black isn't going to let this happen so easily. Let's see how the game continued. We have queen c8. So this can seem like a funny move at first. It does a few things. The main one is it supports this c5 pawn advance. And in a lot of games in the database, we see that this leads to a closed structure. White will often respond by playing d5, and we'll get this position where white has his pawns here, and black has his pawns here. Then the queen will shift back here, and the game will continue with this closed structure. This is not what happens in the game, so let's see how the actual game continued. We have knight c3. Black responds with knight e4. This position has been reached before, but now Hikaru introduces a novelty, bishop to f4. There's no crazy tactic or idea associated with this move. It's just a standard development move. The game continues. Black plays knight takes c3. We have b takes c3. And I want you to pause the video here for a second. If you were black, what would you play? Okay, so maybe you said something like, I would develop my knight and play knight c6. Or maybe you said I would push for a c5 break. Both very valid answers. But black played something that was a little bit surprising. Black in this position played bishop to e4. So yes, this puts the bishop on a great square where it's eyeing two diagonals and it's taking away this square from the queen. But black has all these other pieces that he has to develop, so that's why the move seemed kind of strange. White responds by playing bishop to f1, indicating he doesn't want to trade the light square bishops. We have bishop to d6, intending to trade the dark squared bishops. It's perfectly fine for white to capture here, but Hikaru chooses to go back with bishop to c1. Now, another question for you guys. If you're black in this position, what do you play? Okay, so interestingly enough, the computer says you should admit your mistake and go back with the bishop. Play bishop back to b7. But even though this is the best move, it's a hard move to play because you're moving the same piece 3 times within the first 12 moves. Black does not play this. Black makes this c5 advance. And at this point, it's not a great move because after d5, white is able to establish his pawn on this square that controls this knight. And black's own pawn is preventing the knight from jumping over here. So the knight is quickly being very limited on squares. Here we have a series of exchanges, and then we have rook e8 defending the bishop. White plays c4 defending his pawn. Black plays queen a6, and now, again, take a moment to look at the position and think, how would you defend this pawn? It's under attack by the queen. What would you do? So, what Nakamura played in the game might surprise you. He played knight to d2. And at first, this looks like it gives up an exchange after bishop to e5. But this is what happens in the game, and actually it provides a great advantage for white. So let's play out the moves and we'll talk about the advantage. We have bishop to e5, knight takes e4, bishop takes a1, knight to d6. And now the rook goes back to f8. So looking at the position here, black is up a clear exchange, but white has more than enough compensation. The one thing we mentioned before, this knight, it's stuck. It can't go here. It's blocked here by its own pawn, And now that white's piece is sitting here, this pawn can't even move forward. In addition, the queen first has to move in order for this knight to develop. So for black to get into the game, it's going to take a lot of tempi. And we're going to see how Nakamura exposes this in order to punish his opponent. Nakamura plays e4. We have bishop e5. Black is saying, that knight is a killer. I want to get rid of it. And Nakamura says, well, I'm going to put a piece there, bishop f4. And after bishop takes knight and bishop takes bishop, that knight is still trapped. So we have rook e8 and e5. And slowly, white is grabbing more space in the center. Black's pieces are pretty out of play. This rook can't really do anything. This knight needs several tempi to get into the game. This rook is blocked off, and this queen needs several tempi as well to get into the game. So black tries to start with the queen. He plays queen takes a2. And now we have rook e4. Nakamura's plan is to swing this rook over and point it directly at the king. We have knight a6, finally bringing the knight to the game, and rook g4. And now black plays a move, queen b2. And with this move, he's saying, I'm more than willing to sacrifice in exchange on e5 in order to get my pieces active. And in fact, if we do this exchange sacrifice back, I'll actually be up a pawn. So take a minute, pause, and see how would you respond to this threat. What's the best move for white? And the thing is, there's only one continuation that is winning. All right, so let's start with some non-winning combinations. The first way to defend is queen to e1, but then black can get some good counterplay with f5, rook g5, h6, rook takes, queen c2, and black is getting his queen back into the game just in time to defend against any potential threats. All right, let's take a look at another way to defend this that doesn't quite work. Let's say we try queen to e2. Let's exchange the queens, but after knight b4, well, black is just up in material and we're going into an endgame. So the queen was an integral part of checkmating the king where it is. So that doesn't quite work either. Another plan might be to play queen to a4. The idea here is to let black have his way in exchange for some counterplay. But this position's actually equal. Black would be more than happy to go into this after bringing his rook to e8. So, what is the best and only move in this position? Well, if you found queen f3, you are a GM killer. The reason this works is because after rook takes e5, we have the star move, queen to f6. And now what do? You're threatening checkmate here. The queen and the rook are staring at this. This rook is pinned. You can try something like rook to e2, but you're going to have rook captures, king goes to the corner, and after bishop e7, queen takes, bishop takes, this rook is on pre, checkmate is on pre. This is resignable at this point. So Nakamura found this star move, and this forces black to make a concession. He plays g6, creating a hook in his position. White immediately launches his pawn at this. He plays h4. Black responds h5. White pivots his rook to f4. And now we have a deadly attack up against this pawn. Black tries rook f8. Now we don't want to take this rook. Instead, what we want to do is attack these pawns, open up lines against the king. We have g4, and at this point, black resigned. Why did he resign? Well, he definitely doesn't want to take this pawn. If he takes here, then we'll have this, and let's just say takes. Well, this leads to mate after some kind of sequence like this. The attack was too strong, and Nakamura went on to win this short but very exciting game. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in another one.